All right, good evening, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, in this video, we are going to talk about what it is that you can do in order to save yourself before it is too late. You have to sink or swim here because the options that you have going forward are going to be very limited, and it's really going to depend on you, only you, and there's really nothing else that can come to save you outside of your own attempt to try and figure out what it is that you need to do in order to position yourself in the most appropriate way you can possibly do it to make the best sense of the ideas, skills, placement that you happen to live, like in the world or in the country. This really comes down to your understanding of the situation and how it is that you understand the underlying economic forces that are playing out, as a lot of times you will find the blame and excuses and finger pointing that really isn't very helpful in what it is that you need to do in order to make the most appropriate decisions. Now, I found like a discussion that I had with a gentleman earlier today, and I listened to him tell me all the things that he found wrong with the country, with the politics, with the banking system. He told me everything he essentially didn't like about what it was that was taking place, and not one thing that I hear coming from him was something that he did find appropriate or useful or helpful or anything like that. Everything that he was talking about was a complaint. And I thought to myself, there is no way in the world that you can invest into that. Like maybe you could, I don't know, maybe some people can. I couldn't do that. Like if I was looking at something with such negative attitude, such negative beliefs, it would make it very difficult for me to then understand how it is that I would then attempt to then invest into that. Like you invest into a system hoping to get a return. But if you are of the belief that it's just going to be a complete failure, then why would you investing into that? You wouldn't. You would just be like, complaining about everything all the time, hoping for a better way in which that your wages may go up, or I don't know, somehow a handout comes down and just makes it that much better for you or something of that. I don't know. Like people have a very hopeful, wishful belief out of the government, like somehow they're just going to make, the people's lives just all of a sudden just awesome. And I'm not sure exactly what it is that they think the government could actually do. Like if they handed them a bunch of money, it might feel good for a minute, but the same thing is going to happen that's always happened, and that the people who got the money will essentially spend the money, and then it'll end up in the rich people's hands, and then there will be that much more inequality taking place. So we can discuss and go through all the different reasonings why that happens, or what it is politicians can do, or what it is banking systems can do. But really, what it comes down to is what is it you're going to do? Because that is really the only thing that matters. After that, everything is going to be a hypothetical, or, a possibility, or, who knows, whatever, what if. I don't really necessarily want to go into a life in a what if belief situation. I want to know what is. I want to know what it is that's taking place when it comes to the underlying economic forces and then causes the certain situations that you see. When I think about some of the politics that I see, when I think about the political actions that are happening within the supply chains, tariffs, world trade, banking systems, all this other stuff, I don't look at it as something that I blame. I look at it as something that has essentially evolved into. And if I wanted to, I could definitely pinpoint and pull out all the little factual evidence that says this was a manipulation to be created in order to put the concentration of wealth into the hands of a few and enslave the rest of the world. And I could probably make a lot of money and a lot of content and deliver a lot of information and head straight down that line. However, when I did the research to try and figure out what it was that was taking place within the monetary system, I started coming up with understandings of economic forces that were underlying that I started recognizing within the broader economy. And I thought to myself, man, a lot of what you see going on out there is reactionary. It's not it's not planned. It's a reaction by the people. It's reactions by the politics. Now, when you look at central banking planning, like the financial markets and what it was that the Federal Reserve was looking for their monetary policy and interest rates, there's a lot of manipulation that happened just within that. Now, if you want to put this story together about how politics interacted with banking in order to create this manipulation, in order to manipulate the situation, create this divide, and compass, the people in slavery and concentrate the few, concentrate the hands into the few, well, you're going to find all the evidence of that. You're going to look out there and you're going to be able to pinpoint and find all that stuff. But when you look at it from the historical points that the Federal Reserve was facing, especially over the last 25 years, you can see that the situation that they were facing has now very well and methodically come into fruition in a way that worked out so exquisitely well for the Federal Reserve. It's hard to believe that they didn't plan it. Like, it just landed absolutely perfect for them. See, this is what blows me away when I think about the Federal Reserve and many discussions that I've had with people, and I tell them, what's really odd is that the Federal Reserve wants inflation. They want elevated inflation. They want elevated inflation expectations. And 99.9% of the people that you talk to out there would believe exactly the opposite of that. So I find it very odd that they were able to pull off this narrative that the Fed didn't want inflation. 99.9% of the people will tell you that. The Fed screwed up, didn't want inflation, trying to get inflation down. Yet, here on the Uneducated Economist, the few thousand people who have followed the credible threat theory believe exactly the opposite. That the Federal Reserve not only wanted, hoped, dreamed, prayed, and got elevated inflation expectations to raise the neutral interest rate to save their monetary policy. Now, when you start looking at the reasonings why, it comes down to underlying economic forces that were playing out. See, the major divide that we have between the rich and the poor isn't some secret formula to be created. It happens when you put new money in the system. And if you have ever increasing amounts of new money that pours into the system, you are going to have major inequality as a result of it. There is really little doubt in my mind that it would go any other way. Like, that is it. So understanding that the underlying economic forces that separate the rich from the poor due to the new money coming in is going to continue so long as the new money printer continues to operate. There's no doubt in my mind. How do you deal with that? Well, you can pretend that a day job is going to make it. Believe that the American dream, the good hardcore workforce, be dedicated to your job and spend 8 hours a day and, 50 years at your corporation or whatever it is you're doing. And you can pretend that that's going to be enough to make it. But most likely you're going to find that day job just barely cuts it and it's not really enough. So from the earliest of age, and I mean, you're going to have to talk like parents are going to have to do this for their kids. If they don't, then they're really setting their kids up for failure. They're going to have to start getting their kids into assets early, so that they can start compound interest on savings, on something out there, some sort of investment that is going to have a return. They have to start getting in early, because if they don't, they're going to be left behind. And that's quite unfortunate. It's an unfortunate situation that we are now in. Like, we have no other choice. If you don't do that for your kids, then you're setting them up. You're setting them up for a very difficult life going into the future. Not saying that they won't be able to make it, and I'm just saying it's going to be way hard. Right? Because it's already way hard for people who have a good job. A good job sucks. And the only consumer really here in the United States anymore is the top 20% of household incomes. What do you think 80% of the people? You might be fortunate and raise a good kid and they're really smart and know exactly what they're going to do with their life, and they end up above the 80% of the people and end up in that top 20%, and then you wouldn't have to worry. But 80% of the people aren't going to be there. In fact, it's probably going to get even less. It's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. They were like, no, man, there's got to be something out there. It was just like, okay, well, you can go ahead and hope and wish and dream and expect the politicians or the bankers to do something different than what they're doing. I certainly don't. I just don't. And then there's other people who are like, well, it's just going to fail anyway. Okay, I don't believe that either. What I believe is that I'm going to have to figure out what it is that I need to do in order to show my kids the most appropriate decisions that they could possibly make, in order to figure out what it is that they need to do to get through all this, because it's going to get more difficult going into the future so long as that new money printer goes off. And there's very little doubt in my mind that it'll happen at some point. The expansion of money and credit, the ever-increasing amounts of war, and the ever-increasing amounts of separation between the rich and the poor. Very little doubt. Right? And so when we think about what it is that it's happening here, right? When you know that new money pours in, it's going to drive out the domestic manufacturers. Now, we can go through all the reasonings that it happens and all the things that politicians could possibly do to save it, like the tariffs and subsidies and whatever, tax breaks and stuff like that. But then again, that's an expectation that there's somebody out there who's going to like do something to try and save the day. Very little doubt in my mind, it won't work. Now, if you are productive, if you are industrious, if you can produce and save, you're going to be strong. You're going to have a strong economy. The United States produces some wonderful products. In fact, we build and produce some of the world's greatest products. The only problem that we face and going to face going into the future is that we are going to consume a hell of a lot more than we export. So if you are importing more than you are exporting, right, you are importing stuff and you are exporting money. And now this is the reason why you have such problems with having a good manufacturing job here in the United States. It's because your cost of living, our standard of living, our elevated luxurious lifestyle can't compete against the world out there who is willing to produce for a cheaper price. Now, this isn't having to do with anything with politics or banking or capitalist or anything else like that, because Cantillon described it from hundreds of years ago. I mean, if you want to go and read the essay, there's a link down in the description. It's an Amazon affiliate link. You go and check out that Amazon affiliate link. I get a little commission if you buy that essay off of there, but you do not have to buy the essay off of Amazon. You can get it for free at the Mises Institute. So just go and type in Cantillon Essay on Economic Theory into the Google search. Go to the Mises Institute, get it for free, download the PDF, get to read it whenever you want. Go download that PDF. Go and look at the essay, part 2, chapter 6, 7, and 8. If you don't want to read the rest of the PDF or the rest of the essay, fine, whatever. Those 3, that should be mandatory reading for every single American. Not just every single high school student or whatever. Every single American should read those 3 chapters to understand exactly what it was that took place within this country. We were the manufacturing powerhouse. We produced the world's greatest stuff and sent that stuff out there to the world, and the world sent us their money. At the time, you know what that money was? Gold. Now, you can talk about the war, you can talk about all kinds of political events and stuff like that took place, but you know what? Cantillon described it from hundreds of years ago, that it was the rise of a manufacturing powerhouse that brings in the most abundance of money. You can do it through war, you can do it through all kinds of stuff. Borrowing money. The borrowing money, that's the worst one. But it's the trade. Those who produce more than they buy, more they sell it out there, those are the people who rise as a powerhouse. So when you rise as a powerhouse, you are going to raise your standard of living. There is no doubt about it. Think about it. If you all of a sudden had a business that just boomed and you had a lot of money coming in, tell me you wouldn't do something with that money. I mean, even I myself have to think about it. When the job started paying more, when the YouTube started paying more, when the side hustle started paying more, what did I do? I bought a house, right? I increased my standard of living. It's the same thing that every single person is ever going to do. Now, here's the problem. If I was to have a cutback in my income for any kind of significant manner, it would start to deplete my standard of living. Now, Me being aware of the underlying economic forces keeps my standard of living as low as possible. That's one of the reasons why I drive a 98 Explorer, a 97 Suburban, a 2001 S10. These are the reasons why I do it, is because I keep my living expenses incredibly low, knowing the Cantillon effect is at play. If I raise my standard of living and I can't get the income in, then I'm going to start losing my life, right? Losing my lifestyle. I don't lose my life, I lose my lifestyle. Right? I have to start cutting back on even more, which I don't really even have that many expenses in my life. You know, I mean, but I could cut out some luxurious experience, cut out like the cable TV, right? Cut out that stuff. Yeah. But for the most part, I try to keep it as incredibly cheap. Now, when most Americans go out there and they have a job, they like increase their living to the capabilities of what their pay is going to be. And then when they have a little bit of a downturn, all hell breaks loose. And then they blame politics and blame the government, blame all kinds of stuff out there. But they didn't really take into consideration that, man, maybe the choices I made put me in this position, not really paying attention to what it is that I was going to do if there was ever a downturn. That stuff's hard. It's hard for people to internalize that. Once you get it, once you see it, then you start positioning yourself in a way that says, okay, man, I need a lot of income and I need to have very little expenses so that I can have extra money, right? And that's what I love, is extra money. All the money beyond the money you're already making, you know, like, have you ever heard anybody ever use that term? I have extra money. I laugh at that. It was like, you don't have extra money. There's no such thing as extra money. Right? All the money beyond the money you're already making? Of course not. You know, there's no such thing. What it is you have a certain amount of income and then you have a amount of cost to your living, and whatever it is that's above it is your extra money, right? So you take your extra money, all the money beyond the money you're already making, and you put it towards something that is going to have a return. And now this is the hardest part for a lot of people. They're like, man, what do I do? They literally want me to spell it out for them. Like, dude, step one, what do I do? You know, and I'm thinking to myself, holy moly, this is the hardest part for a lot of people, because they are really scared, right? They just don't know. And I can get it. Like, you don't want to screw it up. You don't want to lose your money. You don't want to feel like you've made the wrong decision and, you know, maybe feel, I don't know, stupid for it or something of that nature. And to me, like, failure is all part of the process. Like, losing, there's no better way of learning something than losing money, right? It was just like, whoa, that was a hell of a lesson, right? Think about it. You just learned a lesson. Lessons don't come for free, right? If it's a free lesson, it's probably not worth that much, you know? But if the lesson comes at a very valuable expense, that's well worth it. Think about that. Right? And most people don't really even think about it as a lesson. Like, and many of you have heard me tell the story of my buddy who was starting a business, ran that business for a few years, and then eventually just couldn't keep it going anymore, and he had to call it quits, and it sent him into bankruptcy, and it was all kinds of issues that came from it. He was very depressed and bummed out, and it was hard to deal with, and all kinds of stuff. And I'm thinking, dude, are you going to do it again? He was like, oh, hell no. And I'm thinking, dude, but you learned all those lessons. Man, you figured it out, man. All the problems that you were facing, you're not going to have the problems like that anymore. You're going to know about them. You're going to be able to face them ahead of time and deal with it before they were a problem, because before you had to deal with it blindly. They were hitting you out of nowhere and you just had to like overcome them as they were showing up. You jump into the game again, you're going to be able to be way ahead of all that stuff. But, you know, the pain, it's a bit much. That lesson learned, it was a painful lesson. What a valuable one, man. I would kill to have that understanding, that knowledge, that experience. To have that inside of the idea of what it is to run business. I mean, come on. Who gets that? Nobody, unless you're doing it. Right? But you gotta stick with it. That painful experience is hard to overcome. But it was a lesson. Well worth it. Costly. How do you get the lesson? You know, you don't unless you get that, right? So this is where a lot of people end up feeling the struggle of trying to figure out what it is that they need to do with that extra money, is they don't want to experience the pain, but yet you need to kind of go through it in order to get the reward, which is the lesson learned on how it is that you're supposed to do it. I mean, nobody just comes and just, I mean, some people probably will. They're like, here, look at me. I'm golden child. Boom, 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 boom. Look at me. Make $1 million in 10 weeks. Okay. Nobody can, like, I don't know anybody who can do that. Maybe, I don't know. I can't, I'm not going to even try to do something like that. But I can dollar cost average. I can go out there and I can hustle and earn extra money. I can cut back on my expenses, and then I can figure out what it is that I need to do to deploy that money and to get some sort of return. Now, for a lot of people, they want to be in real estate. They ask me, I was like, dude, how do I do it in real estate? And I'm like, well, you got to hang out with people who are in real estate, right? Like, you got to literally hang out with 5 people. That's all they do is real estate. Because if you hang out with 5 people, you're going to be the sixth one who's doing real estate. That's how it works. You got to hang out. You got to be in the energy of the people that you want to be emulating or being like, or, want to achieve a level that, they've achieved. You got to be hanging out with those people. That's the only way it works. If you're not hanging out with those people, who are you hanging out with? Like, what possibly could you be talking about that is going to give you the right ideas in order to achieve the goals that you are looking for if you are not hanging out with the right people? You can possibly. They're going to talk about the ideas on how it is that they don't get it done. Then you go and talk to people on how it's done. Which one, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious. You got to hang out with the people that are doing it. And this is where I find, like, a lot of times it's difficult for people to then build that network, right? How do I do that? I'm not anybody. Who am I? I'm nobody out there, and I don't know how it is and I'm supposed to meet these people. Well, I think about it. It was just like, I'm a nobody. Like, I barely graduated high school. I don't have any kind of real business. I don't have anything going on as far as investments or stuff like that. I'm just some dude out here on YouTube, but I was able to meet the connections. And a lot of times, it's simply just saying yes to things. It's simply being there and being available. Like, when the email comes in, you reply to the email. When the offer comes up, you jump up and say yes. If it's a fearful thing, you lean into it. I think about all the connections that All Nighter makes. I don't know if he's out here in the live stream. I haven't been really looking at the comments. Sorry, guys. But All Nighter is like the network of the networkers. I mean, that dude has made connections across the country in ways that, like, I am just so impressed by. Like, I mean, that dude needs to write a book on networking, and he's using it to his advantage. He has the gift of gab. He is willing to jump in and have a conversation with just about anybody out there, and he's a pleasant dude to talk to. He's engaged with all kinds of people out there for all kinds of things, and he was able to use that to his advantage, right? Like, just literally just him just speaking with people, just hanging out and being in the area in the right time, in the right, in the right moment, and then building that network up, and then using that network to then position himself. Like, he's doing it right here, right now, in front of us. It's fun to watch, it's just like amazing. It blows me away. I go to some of these economic conferences, and All Nighter's more popular than some of the speakers. It's like, how does he do that? That's incredible. But that's the point of it. All right, you use your skills, you use your abilities. It doesn't matter the position is, it doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter where you came from. Like, none of that is important, right? None of it is. Right? What's important is that you are definitely moving in the direction in which that it is that you want to be moving. And how you do that is by being in the groups that are doing what it is that you want to be doing. And that's it. That's as simple as that. When you start thinking about how it is that I'm supposed to, like, tell me, how am I supposed to invest? I'm telling you, you're going to be making mistakes at some point. Don't make it all at once. Like, don't put your whole $100,000 on black. You know, you take your time. You learn. You step into the game. Like, I remember I was doing, like, very small little purchases of cryptocurrencies and stuff. Like, I don't think I've ever purchased anything more than maybe $100 at any given time. Like, literally, out of all, like, I've built up in my opinion, a decent portfolio over the last few years of stocks and bonds and, cryptocurrencies and different things. Mostly it's cryptocurrencies. And I've done it all dollar cost averaging, and I don't think I ever spent more than $100. Usually it's 50. That's it, just $50. And when you're doing it at $50 at a time, although it's kind of it kind of hurts a little bit when you drop $50 on the table, but literally within hours, it's almost gone, that feeling. And then a few days later, it's like you don't even remember it at all. You do that once a week. You pay yourself once a week, a couple of times a week, once a month, however it is that you are figuring out how to do that stuff, and you do it quite regularly, you're going to be amazed on how quickly you can actually build up a portfolio, especially if you are paying attention to where it is that you are putting that and not just guessing, but actually taking logical steps to put it into a right direction. And even if you fail, by meaning like you lose money in the stock market, understanding why. Why did it happen? Like, not blaming. You can say, oh, it was them. If they didn't do that, it would have been fine. Well, that's not going to work, right? I mean, it may work for some people. It's not going to work for me. It didn't work for me at all. I mean, in fact, when I was using that kind of excuse, I found myself in a horrible position. So really, you have to understand it in a way that says, man, I am in this, like, I know this industry, right? Like, I know lumber industry. I know supply chains. I know stuff like that. I don't invest in copper. I don't know anything about copper. The most investment in copper I do is copper pennies, right? I filter through the change and I pull the pre-81s out, 81s and earlier. I understand that they have copper. The other ones have zinc. That's about as much as I know about copper when it comes to, mining and, industrial supplies and inventory levels and all that other stuff. I mean, my knowledge of that is pretty low. But when it comes to lumber, I think that my knowledge of that is pretty damn high. Like, there's people out there who probably know more than I, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the smartest person in the world when it comes to it, but I can hold my own when it comes to the lumber industry and what it is that I know about it. So I'm not like trying to say that I don't know a thing about copper, but compared to the lumber, I don't know anything about copper, And so you have to know what it is your industry, know about your industry and what it is that you can see from it. Now, knowing something about the lumber industry, I then can use that to then look at the broader economy. Now, that's me personally. A lot of times people say, you can't do that. That's not the way it works. And they give me all reasons why, why my ideas and, my logic is, not adequate or whatever, and I just have to laugh at it because of the accuracy. Like, my history proves itself, right? I mean, my reputation is on the lumber industry is second to none. So it's just like, whatever, I don't try and defend myself anymore when it comes to it. I know what I'm talking about. And so when I see that in the broader economy, it then helps me to understand that, man, if we are down right now, I might want to take a little bit bigger position, or maybe I don't want to necessarily deploy a whole lot of money right now. And again, this is all from your just understanding of what it is that's taking place within the broader economy. You guys are awesome. I've just rambled on for like a half an hour. What are you guys talking about? Let me grab my glasses here. Was that fun? Oh, jeez, I can't see nothing. I gotta scoot a little closer. Okay. Home building, bad economy. Yeah, don't forget to hit the like button. Yes, please do. Hit the like button. I know how badly Simon needs it. Well, I appreciate it, Graham Bucket, even if you are very critical of the channel at times. All right. Does the Fed accelerate the Cantillon effect, or they try to slow it down? I don't know if they necessarily try. But, I mean, obviously, the Cantillon effect is when new money comes into the system and the people who have first access to the money get to spend it at face value. As it filters through the system, the people who have last access to it, they suffer the most as all the prices have moved up, but the wages have basically been stagnant. Now, as we look at what has taken place within the economy right now, and that the living wage jobs are just simply not keeping up, and that the top 20% of households seem to be spending just fine, well, that's pretty obvious to me that the Cantillon effect is very well at play, and anytime you have new money coming into the system, it gets even worse. So whether or not the Federal Reserve was there or not, right, it doesn't really matter, right? Because essentially the Cantillon effect is going to play out one way or the other. See, even if you turn the new money off, it's still not like the Cantillon effect still isn't at play. You turn the new money off, and everybody's starting to fall into pain and misery because that's exactly what's going to happen from the descriptions of what Cantillon is saying. Due to the fact that you moved into luxuries. If you didn't move into luxuries, it wouldn't have been such a painful experience. But, your luxurious life is a wonderful experience until it's not, and then like giving up the cars and the houses and the trips and the vehicles and the women and the clothes and all the other stuff that's going on. It is a very painful experience. You don't want to do that. And so, yeah, the Cantillon effect is still at play, whether the Federal Reserve is there or not. It's always at play. Always. Doesn't matter if there's a Federal Reserve or silver mine or war effort or whatever. Think about the new money and how that comes in. Whether it's through debt issuance, like a central banking system, through war, like going out there like the Romans and just conquering, through shipping channels like the what am I trying to say? The Dutch, right? So here you got like this different ways of being able to bring in new money. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the banking industry. It could come from all kinds of different things. But it's a matter of it being new money, right? Now, again, like right now, we just know it as debt issuance through the central banking system. But if you just think about it in any fashion, it doesn't matter how it happens, whether it's through mining, production, stealing it, just being given to you. It's just like, it doesn't matter. As long as it's new money coming in, you're going to have the same effect from it. And then once the new money turns off, pain and misery follow. I gotta scoot a little closer here. Okay, good to see you again. I'm not getting most of the notifications I should. Yeah, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing about YouTube right now, is that it hates the uneducated economist. That's why it's really nice when you guys are hitting the thumbs up button. The thumbs up button, that is really telling the YouTube algorithm to grab this video and spread it around. YouTube wants to make money just like everybody else does, and if you're engaged in the video, then YouTube recognizes that. Hitting the like button, making a comment, sharing the video, especially sharing it, all these things start to pick up starts getting YouTube to start spreading it around, because it figures, hey man, this is a good video and everybody wants to watch it. And of course, they're just wanting to make money anyway by getting more people to watch the videos. But that's besides the point. We're trying to help out the uneducated economist by having it sponsored by the viewers itself. And the only thing you really have to do to help support the uneducated economist is literally engage with the channel, and that's it. Artificial intelligence and quantum computing will be a very interesting topic. Yeah, and it really is. And once we see it, like, there's a lot of suspicions of what it is that it's going to do and could do and disrupt, especially when it comes to like the cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. But really, we have to wait and see what it is that it's going on, with it, as far as what it is that it can do with its capabilities, especially with the idea that it destroys the blockchain technology kind of ideas. 90 likes for 277 viewers is disrespect. Grand Pocket, you're so... All right, I think I had enough of Professor Simon for tonight. Goodbye. See ya. All right, do you think the economy will tighten for the bottom 80%? It will soon be the top 10% making the consumption. Do I think the economy will tighten for the bottom 80%? Yeah, I absolutely do. And that's one of the reasons why you're going to see so much talk about MMT and UBI and all that other stuff, is because the powers that be, in order to keep the economy moving, and see, this is the problem with it, is that they are going to try and increase aggregate demand, right? Aggregate spending, consumption, one way or the other. Now, there was a time it was pretty easy for them to do this, and that all they had to do was lower interest rates. Now, people think about the lowering of interest rates as the ability for the consumer to borrow money cheaply to go out there and consume, but that's not necessarily what it is that the Federal Reserve was looking at. And this is important to understand, because this is what broke down. This is the reason why the Federal Reserve is essentially screwed right now. And that when the Fed lowered interest rates to zero, what ended up happening is that the lowering of unemployment during that time didn't create the inflationary scenario that they were looking for. And this was a major problem. We have to think from the end of the Obama administration all the way through Trump's first administration, we had historically low unemployment and inflation that was nowhere to be found. Remember, even Donald Trump was saying there's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money, right? And he was saying that at the end of his first administration. Now, funny thing about this is that most people misunderstood what it was that was taking place. This was the flattening of the Phillips curve. The Fed typically would lower interest rates. Corporations would borrow money and hire people. By hiring people, you would lower that unemployment, and all those people going to work would increase the spending, right? More people working, more people earning that money, and then going out there and spending that money. That would increase the aggregate demand. But that broke down. It failed. It didn't work anymore. So now what is the Federal Reserve going to do? They lower interest rates. You go to work. Unemployment falls. All these people could go and, find all the jobs they want. There's you couldn't step outside without finding a help wanted sign. And the problem that they face from it is it doesn't increase the aggregate demand spending from that group of people. All right? It didn't work. You can go to work all day. You can work as much as you want. All that wages that you go get at your day jobs, at your hourly wages, doesn't increase your consumption. You don't go out there and you don't consume that much more. You're spending it all in rent. You're spending it all in gas. You're spending it all in food. And there is no extra for you. You have no more extra money. No more money beyond the money you're already making. And as time goes on, that extra gets depleted even further and further away. So now who is it that is making the purchases? How is it that it possibly works? They lowered the interest rates. All these people want to work and it doesn't increase the aggregate demand. It doesn't increase the consumption. Federal Reserve pulls their hair out. How do we figure this thing out? Right? Well, now who is doing the spending? Well, the top 20% are doing spending way more than anybody else is. In fact, if you go and you look, 10% of the people do 50% of the consumption. Holy shit. The top 10% of people, top 10% of household incomes does 50% of the consumption. Holy moly, that is insane to even try and wrap your head around. So if that is true, just go Google it for yourself and let's just assume that's true for a second. Then the next 10% of people beyond that first 10%, so the next 10% after that, I would only assume is probably doing another 50% of the remaining consumption. Right? So if the top 10% are doing 50% of the consumption, the next 10% are probably doing another 50% of the remaining consumption, which means the top 20% of people are doing somewhere around 75% of the consumption. They're literally doing it all. 80% of the people do just a little tiny bit of the consumption that is out there. And even if you were to increase their wages and, incomes or whatever it is going on, they're going to increase that consumption just a little bit. Even if you doubled it, it wouldn't even be that much comparatively to what it is that the top 20% are doing. That's going to get worse going into the future. I hope people wrap their heads around that. Because that is going to get worse if that's a bad thing, that's going to get worse going into the future. Why is it that they're able to do all this spending and everybody else can't? Well, what is it that the top 20% have? Assets. Right? They have houses, they have stocks, they have bonds, they have businesses, they have all the things that have all that money coming in from having the assets, having the elevated interest rates, having the businesses that are moving out there and doing things. The rest of us are trying to trade time for dollars and it's not enough. There was a time when it was. See, back when we were an international or when we were the manufacturing powerhouse sending our stuff out there to the world, we were close to the money. Our skills of building good products and sending those products out there to the globe had that money coming to us. We were very close to the money. We were able to raise our standard of living on that. That's not the way we do it anymore. We have to buy foreign production, bring it into this country, and then sell it to each other before we can have a job. There is no way in the world that we are able to reverse that. That problem is going to get worse going into the future. If that's a problem, it's going to get worse going into the future. So now what is it that the globe, or what is it that the country could possibly do? What is it that the Fed The government, what is it they could possibly do about the situation other than just giving you money so that you'll go out and consume? Because your job isn't going to be enough and you didn't buy assets. So you're going to just fall behind if they literally don't force feed money into you. And that's where UBI comes in. It isn't to make a better life for you. It's because they literally have no other choice. Unless they just want to see the system completely collapse on itself because you are no longer a consumer. So they're going to force feed money into you to produce a consumer because your wages is not going to be enough. And you don't have any assets or businesses. You're not in the top 20%. And I don't care how good your job is, even if you're like in the 21%, you're going to fall behind if you are depending on wages or a particular, like, location. If you don't have your own business, if you don't have many forms of revenue coming in from different directions, if you're not doing any of that stuff, then you can expect to be down in the 80% and probably fall behind. This is a scary scenario. I know, I get it. Like, I don't like the fact that it's happening, and most people get mad at me when I describe it this way. And, whatever, I mean, I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I'm just here to describe what it is that I'm seeing out there. And for most people, it's probably pretty depressing, I've lived in depression a long time. This stuff isn't depressing to me anymore. It's just the way it is. All right. Alright, we're going to give it a few more minutes here, guys, and then probably call it quits here at the hour mark. Alright, don't depend on the government for anything. Subsidized spending is crazy work. They are going to pump money in pretty soon. Look at the deficit surplus chart. Someone tell the government that we are sorry and please give us the money for assets. They did. What did you do with the COVID money? Yeah. They can cause pain and misery and get voted out of office. Yeah, Cantillon nailed this one on the bullseye. Thank you, Standard Nursery. Simon, thoughts on millennials blaming the boomers for the economic situation? What do they think boomers did? Well, they don't know, and see, that's the other thing. When you blame anything or anyone outside of your own decisions, then literally you are going to send yourself onto the bottom side of the wedge because there's nobody going to come to help. Like, you can say, oh, here, there, right? And you got the 5 things that cause the issues. And when you start eliminating those things, you're going to find yourself still in the same position because you're blaming an external. In fact, once you start removing one, you will replace it with something else, right? Now, when you eliminate all that blame and you finally look back at it yourself and you're like, okay, maybe I drank too much, maybe I gambled too much, maybe I blew it too much on, parties and good times or whatever it was that was out there. Maybe I should have bought into Bitcoin. Maybe I should have bought some silver. Maybe I should have started that business. Maybe I should have got some education, right? And you start looking at it this way and you think about it and you think, well, maybe that was it. Right? I mean, boomers had a good, awesome opportunity, but they were in that cycle. It wasn't their fault. They had good manufacturing jobs that gave them the ability to become a manufacturing powerhouse, raise their standard of living, have a bunch of kids off of one income, and people say, oh man, it's their fault. Why? Why is it their fault? Because they actually enjoyed themselves when they had that standard of living because of their good manufacturing jobs? I mean, you want to blame them for being in a luxurious position because they actually enjoyed their money? I mean, you want to blame your parents for giving you a bed to live in or sleep in at night? Like, you think about it, the luxurious experience from increasing your standard of living because you had an increase in new money because you were a rise in industrious power, that is the reason why we are suffering with the inequality that we do today. If you want to blame boomers for anything, you can blame them for enjoying themselves, for working hard and then taking that hard work and buying a house and then buying into stocks and buying into businesses. They raised their standard of living, right? All the domestic manufacturers left. Sorry for you. You could have lived on the ground. Like, what if you were living on the ground? Would you be happy if you had a manufacturing job because you would be able to compete against somebody else out there in the globe who was living on the ground? Would that make you happy? I mean, I don't know what to tell these boomers out there. This is a situation that you have to face. You have more opportunity now than anybody else in the entire world ever had at any given time. And you want to blame boomers? They didn't have the opportunities that you got. They had opportunities unlike you got, but they didn't have the opportunities like you got. You know how many different ways there are of making money out there that they never even had a possibility of even considering? The internet didn't exist back then. They were like doing side hustles of real skills and services, not just making up AI internet content. This is a difference in the world that we live in. The opportunities for you to take advantage of money flow now are more prevalent than at any time in history, and people say there's no options now. Blame the boomers for taking all the good and I'm thinking, man, not even close. We have better technology, more conveniences, more food, more stuff going on today than at any time in history with the greatest healthcare, technologies now than in any time in history. Like, how is it possible that they ruined anything? They left us with an incredible opportunity here to take most advantage for the situation that we can with our skills and understandings of what it is that we can do. And thank you guys. Thank you boomers for doing what you do. I mean, I can't blame them. Think about it, man. If they didn't do what they do, we wouldn't be here today. People say this is a horrible place. I'm thinking, no, it's not. It's awesome. This place is awesome. Think of it. There's like so much awesomeness that happens now. I can't even believe it. And people are like, no, it sucks. And it doesn't. Just like, I don't know how it is that it sucks. It may suck for them because they just didn't position themselves accordingly, but that can change. God, I can't see this. Okay, I am no longer economically viable. Oh, that's a bummer. But sometimes it's something that must be done. How much do you think and how long do you think they will feed us cash? Well, I think, if it goes on, I mean, it'll get to a point where it'll just be nonstop. You have to think, if it could be anywhere the imagination can stretch it. I'm just trying to think of what it is that they could do in order to keep the separation of the rich and the poor from growing so much that it just literally destroys the bottom half of people. The only way to do that is literally through money injections. Like that's how I see it. I mean, at least the efficiency way of going about it. If you do a single money injection, at some point you're going to have to do more, right? So say it's just like, if you do $100 a month, eventually it's not going to be enough. And you're going to have to do $200 a month. And then $400 and $800. And then pretty soon you're going to have to do $100 a day, $100 twice a day, $100 an hour, right? That's eventually what we'll end up getting to, because you're going to have to continuously pour the new money in. It's only one direction it can go. And if it goes any other direction, it will collapse. Now, you will have times in which that it will move the other direction, and people will be like, oh, look at the pain and suffering and misery, and then boom, they'll fire it back up again. So I'm not saying like there will be no moment in history in which that no, there will be times in which that you will have collapse and depressions and recessions and all the other stuff that goes with it. But for the most part, it will be ever increasing amounts of new money, new debt, new war, right? More separation. And yeah, you think about it, it's just like, you have to keep pumping the money in, and then eventually you'll just weaken up. You won't have enough money to pump in there. You'll just have to keep going until eventually it just won't work anymore. Alrighty, thank you guys. Do you think this is all better understood as emergent outcomes of complex economic and institutional incentives rather than deliberate design? Do you think this is better understood as an emergent outcomes of complex economic and institutional incentives rather than deliberate design? Well, I mean, when I go back and I think about how it is that Cantillon described the separation between the rich and the poor, how domestic manufacturers move off into foreign production. And when I think about some of the things that we have going on in this country and the blaming that I see taking place, like even Judy Shelton on the Monanco 64 interview that did a little review of. I mean, even inside of that, it's blaming of China and politics and, current, the way that they handle the banking systems or something. And I'm thinking, what she's describing is literally symptoms of the deeper problems that we face within the economy. So when I look at it, like I'm sorry. Uh, I don't look at like I don't really look at how we are functioning within this economy as a deliberate design as much as people have deliberately taken advantage of the way that it is designed. Does that make sense? Like they understand how this is working, why it is that we go down the path that we do. And by understanding that to the level that they do, they are able to position themselves to take the most advantage of it. And then people call that manipulation. And so, like, inside of that, I don't think it's necessarily manipulation. Like, if I had the money, if I had the position, I would do it. And then people would call me a manipulator too. Right. And it'd be like, well, yeah, but if you see it and you understand it and you don't do it, then, like, then you're not a manipulator. Like, I mean, just for the simple fact, like, how many people tell me, I was like, dude, just go take the sponsorships, right? And I don't really take sponsorships here on this channel. I haven't for a very, very, very long time. And really, that's where all the money is, right? Like, if you want to make money on YouTube, you do sponsors. But I don't do them. Now, I think about that. Why not? Like, go get the money. If my whole goal was to be just nothing but getting the money, that would be stupid not to go out there and get the money. But I don't like the feeling I get. I don't like the way the channel, I don't like the videos that are all any other stuff that goes with it. I just add the sponsorships. It's not for me, right? I just don't like any of it. But if I was trying to get money, that's where it's at. And then I would ignore that. So let me ask you, if you are somebody who is after the money, well, would you just not go get it? Of course you would. And then if you knew how to do it, and then you're like, oh no, I guess I'm just going to go work the shovel instead of going out there and getting it because I know how to do it by creative finance or, investment or borrow, whatever it is you're doing out there. You see where I'm getting at? People who understand it, know it very well, have deliberately taken advantage of the system. Now, whether or not they designed the system to take advantage of it, I mean, sure, I guess. I mean, there's people who know how to work around the regulations, know how to, circumvent the authorities or whatever in order to take full advantage of it because they understand or maybe even built the system themselves. I mean, yeah, that happens. But then really, when you think about it from a deeper level, it's because of the new money that has come in that has risen to the level that it has, that's given those people the opportunity to even do it. So it's really the new money coming in. Okay? If you have it coming up like we do, like if you're going to pour it in through the banking system, then you're going to have corruption like you do. There's like little doubt. You can't help it. It's just part of it. And now, if you want to continue to pour the new money in, just expect the corruption. You can expect the regulations. You can expect the politics. You can expect all that crap that comes from it. But if you don't have it, then we can all fall into pain and misery and not have the elevated lifestyle that we do, where we buy the production of the world for empty paper promises to buy more stuff with empty paper promises into the future. It's sad, but that's just the case. So you think about it, like even being an American, buying the production of the globe with debt, like, makes you a manipulator. Like, do you really, like, all those, I mean, not you personally, but think about the general American who's up to their eyeballs in debt, driving all kinds of fancy vehicles, wearing all kinds of fancy clothes, using all kinds of foreign production. And you think about it, like, that's a manipulation within themselves. They have no intentions on paying it. They took full advantage of the situation. Like, they took full advantage of the system as just an individual person Go out there, borrow all this money, buy all this foreign production, send all that wealth right out of this nation right over there, and have themselves with this elevated lifestyle that's on the fringe of failure, but it's a total manipulation of the system. People do it every single day. I mean, whether you're rich, capitalistic, making $1 billion a year, or you're just some dude who's just, exploiting the banking system with debt and, just ride it out as long as you can until the whole thing collapses, is still manipulation of the system one way or the other. So the system is like, literally, that's it. It's a manipulation game. I mean, let me borrow from the future in order to have something today. I mean, how far into the future can you borrow? When the future comes, I was like, why do I have to pay? I didn't say I was obligated to pay this, and even put me under this obligation. 50 years into the future, and people aren't even born yet. They're going to pay? The whole game is manipulation. They're manipulators, and I'm thinking the whole thing is one big giant manipulation. It was like, you're part of the manipulation. Thank you, T Flats, for the $7.99. As a business, the government forces me to spend. What is that? I gotta put on my glasses. Spend or get taxed. If I don't spend, I get taxed. If I do spend, I pay less. Forces me to be a consumer. Yeah, T Flats, that's true. Right? I mean, what would you rather do? Pay the taxes or buy the stuff, right? So, you might as well spend it on your business and increase your business operations because, what would you rather have? The stuff or the money, and then pay taxes on all that money. We're going to give it like another 4 minutes here, and then we're probably going to call it quits. Okay, yes, it's called eating healthy, exercising, and eating your Flintstone gummies. I've got a gold machine to never stop. Ultimate power corrupts unimaginable greed. No one is forced to take out a 30, 50, 100-year loan, and most people ride the inflation till they move. And here's the thing, what I find very amusing is nobody forced these people to take out loans and put themselves into that kind of debt. And I'm thinking, no. And nobody denied these people the ability to take out that loan and buy a cash flowing asset that then pays them not only beyond the debt payment, but then also gives them a little bit of extra money. And then they do this over and over and over and over again. And then people say oh man, they totally manipulated the system. And I'm thinking, why? Everybody has that option. I mean, not everybody exactly has that option, but everybody can go for something like that. I mean, that's how all the rich people did it. There was people who complained about it. They were like, hey man, this sucks. You can't be just issuing out all this money. This is this fakery that's going on here. And they're like, yeah, well, we're going to do it anyway. I was just like, well, you know what? I'm going to buy some cash flowing assets. What do you think about that? And they're like, well, I mean, that's your choice. And then they do it, and then they excel and fly away from everybody else. And then they say, well, people get mad about that. And I think, do it yourself. I mean, don't get mad at it. Just go do it. I mean, you don't want to do it that way, but then you get mad at other people who do it that way. Why? I don't understand that. I understand that you want to do it in your way and make it happen, but, that's not fair, and life isn't fair, so, oh well. This point Simon is hitting on is why stimmy checks didn't make average people wealthy. You're absolutely right, Standard Nursery. It's because here's the thing, anybody who asks me, what is it that I need to invest in? And I'm thinking, well, do you have any debt? And they're like, well, of course, I got a car loan and I got credit cards or something like that. And I'm like, there you go, man. You don't need to ask me about investments. There you got your investment. Just pay off your debts. There's no greater investment in the world than pay off your debts. Right? Maybe the only way that it wouldn't be is if you have a 3% loan on a house, right? Because at 3%, maybe then, you can actually get a return on something that's far beyond that 3% that you're paying on that loan. So it would make sense to deploy the money into an investment that gets like a 10% return. So you're actually getting 7%. That would make sense. But if you have credit card debt or a car loan or something that has a high interest loan to it, just pay off the loan. That's it. That's all. Like super, super, super easy, man. There ain't nothing to it. It's just like, it's guaranteed like the smartest move you could go to. There's nothing else that you should go to, right? Except for the only thing that maybe like that might change that would be like a business opportunity that you don't want to miss out on, or education. Get in early on that education. Like those two things, maybe. Right? If you just don't want to miss out and it's an early, get in early kind of thing. Other than that, just pay off the debts. And what's awesome about it is that if you're in the mind of paying off that debt, like, I mean, I kid you not, I had broken down vehicles, walking everywhere, and like if I ended up with $20 cash in my hand, I would walk to my bank and put it on my credit card that I owed like over $9,000 on. But I didn't care. I would go down there and I would still put that $20 on it or whatever I had because I wanted to make sure that I was investing the entire time. See, this is what I heard from an investor one time. I'm listening, trying to figure out where it is that I need to put my money, and that's what he said. That, pay off your debts. There's no better investment than that. And I thought, damn, I was supposed to figure out where it was I was going to put my money so that I could become a millionaire to pay off my debts. And he's telling me to just pay off my debts first. It's just like, oh God, fine. Right? So I started paying off my debts. What's cool about that is that the moment that I paid off my final debt, I was in instant cash flow, instantaneous flow. And all of a sudden I had the ability to buy assets. Wow. Right? It was a complete change of everything. So that's all you really need to do. Just pay off your debts. And don't take on a bunch of debts so you can pay them off. Pay off your debts. Drive the 97 Suburban, right? And then once you're out of that, now you got all kinds of breathing room. What is the most you have been in debt, Simon? I mean, right now is the most I'm in debt. I mean, I'm in $396,000 on my house, and then, but other than that, like just like consumer debt kind of stuff, and not like mortgage debt. It wasn't actually that much debt. It was the position that I was in that I couldn't pay it, and I was sinking deeper and deeper. So, like probably even at its worst, I think I was probably only about 20 grand or so, $20,000 in debt. But it doesn't really matter if you are not able to make your bills and you're sinking just a little bit more every month. So it doesn't matter if you're $20,000 or $220,000. At that point, it's just an overwhelming amount of money that you're just not going to be able to pay. You're just struggling to figure it out. Another month, another set of bills comes in, and you're not going to be able to pay them all. It's just like, it doesn't matter if it's $20,000 or $220,000 or $2 million at that point. It's just like, it's just an overwhelming amount of money. So it isn't, it to me, like, I think back on it, and it didn't seem like that much now, but at the time it was the entire world, With no debt, nobody will give you anything. And prioritize paying off debts with a higher interest first while making minimums on the others. Yeah, and well, that's probably the most logical way of going about it. To save the most money is to pay off the highest interest rate first. And I totally agree with that. However, there's a psychological game that's also being played, right? And that's really where I think a lot of times people misunderstand it. Like, if you already have it down deep in your subconscious, then cool, no worries, right? Then like definitely go for the smartest position, which is to pay off the highest interest rate. But if you are struggling to do this, you're struggling to save, struggling to pay off debts, struggling to do this stuff, then line up all your debts, right? And pay off that lowest one first, right? Boom, you got 12 debts that you need to pay. You just knocked it out. Now you got 11. Now you got 10. Now you got 9. Now you see what I'm saying? And you're knocking it down to just a handful of them that you have left. That is a very good feeling, and it carries momentum with it. Right. So it may not be like the most logical for saving money or getting the most out of paying off your debts early, but it definitely triggers something within your head and the feelings that you have about paying off debt when you see this one's gone and that one's gone and hey, don't have that one coming in no more and that guy's taken care of and this one's out of here, and you're narrowing it down like that. It's a really awesome internal feeling, subconscious belief system that is now being triggered in order to get the rest of those paid off. But if you're already in that mindset, then yeah, definitely go to the highest interest rate and pay that one off first. But if you need that encouragement, you need to get, motivated, then line them all up and look at the cheapest one. And if it's like a couple $100, get it out of here, get on to the next one, knock that one out. And then once you start doing that, then maybe switch over and you start getting that motivation going, then switch over and start doing the high interest ones. All right. Hey, peeps, I'm shot. I'm hitting the sack. All right. Is that Wayne? Is that Wayne? All righty, Wayne. Cool. Thank you for being here. I'll be watching for tomorrow lunch stream. See you there. Right on, buddy. Thank you so much for being here. All right, Simon, can you explain how the SLR requirements by the Federal Reserve is affecting how banks are now just hoarding their excess cash and not lending to each other or lending to the economy? Okay, so I think I don't necessarily believe that they are not lending. They're just demanding a higher return. Okay, so the supplement leverage ratio. Now, this, to be honest with you guys, I wish I knew more about the inner workings of the banking system than I do. And it's hard because it's an incredibly complicated thing to understand. And this is what's funny about it is like, I'm not a mechanic. Right? I don't know about working on engines. I don't know how to work on an engine. I don't even think about working on engines because I wouldn't know what to do about working on engines. I can change the alternator, I can change the starter, maybe change spark plugs. But then, after that, I'm going to be like, okay, well, what? I don't know what to do next. But I kind of understand how a combustion engine works, right? Like you got a carburetor. I don't know exactly how that thing operates, but I know that it's mixing fuel and air, right? It's get the gas and air mixture, and then it goes into the engine through, something called an intake manifold. And again, I'm not exactly sure how that's like easily distributed through there, but somehow it sucks into the cylinders, which, then has 4 strokes to it. It has the intake, compression, ignition, exhaust, right? So there's these pistons that are working in there. And then that is attached to a crankshaft, which eventually is delivering the power out of the engine. Now, I get all that part of it, but I couldn't tell you like anything really how the operations, how the pieces go together. Like, I don't know anything about that stuff, right? It's kind of like the banking system. Like, I understand kind of like that, right? I understand there's all these parts and pieces. So the SLR is another part inside of this thing that then is now creating like a situation within the banking system that I don't think a lot of people are quite understanding. All right, let's set the engine analogy off to the side for a little bit. The SLR, the supplement leverage ratio. The big banks, the global, systemically important banks, they are regulated to have a certain amount of coverage to meet their assets to meet the okay, so assets and liabilities, right? So you have liabilities out there. They have to have a certain amount of coverage to meet the assets and liabilities that they have out there that are hold on, let me see. So the supplement leverage ratio, let me see if I can explain this easily for you guys. What this is basically going to do is it's going to require the banks to hold a certain amount of either capital or easily liquidable assets, like high quality liquidable assets, something that they can then either turn into cash within a short amount of time or a certain amount of capital that they have based on the assets that they have acquired on their balance sheet. And I know this seems very, like, kind of, it seems like I'm kind of stuttering through this, but I want to explain it in a way that I think is easily understood, which is not going to be done considering how complicated what it is that we're talking about. But then also to understand like what it is that the banks are facing. So in order to understand this, it's almost like a balance sheet constraint. Like they build this balance sheet up to a certain level with these particular assets that are on there. When they get there, the regulations are saying because you are a globally systemic important bank, if you do not have these particular assets on hand that can be converted to cash very quickly in case of like, people start pulling their money out, they don't have like a Silicon Valley Bank situation. So they are required to have a certain amount of their portfolio inside of these high quality liquid assets. And then you also have something called the uh, liquidity coverage ratio. That's where they have to have these high quality assets. Then if their balance sheet is of a particular size, they have to have a certain amount of capital because of that size of that balance sheet. So when you have the government coming in and spending a bunch of money, the primary dealers have to load up on these treasuries, which then says, hey, we got all these particular assets, which is going to require us to start carrying more capital. If that is the case, if you want to borrow money and we have to carry this capital, then you're going to have to pay a higher return for it because this particular capital would normally get deployed to pay or to go off and get a bigger return, right? So if that's the case, then we need to get a bigger return from the loans that we are giving out there on account of the size of our balance sheet. Does that kind of make sense? I don't know, guys. I mean, I don't want to say it's because basically their balance sheet is too big or of particular assets that then requires them to demand a higher return on their loans that they get out there. But that's essentially what is happening. The balance sheet constraints that they are now facing because of the not only in the drawdown in liquidity that is happening from the Federal Reserve and the Fed's, their quantitative tightening program, the amount of liquidity within the banking system that has then put that bank, balance sheet into that kind of position with the constraints that are happening out there. I think a lot of times people now focus in on that saying, well, these banks don't want to lend to each other. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I just think it's too costly for them to loan to each other at that low interest rate. When they take on that particular asset, they have to carry more capital because of it, because of the banking requirements that are upon them. I honestly think that this was a mechanism that was built into the banking system so that the Federal Reserve could fine-tune the interest rate adjustments within the banking system by using those banking regulation requirements. So ultimately, like, even though they said, hey, we got the Fed funds rate going down because of the bank's balance sheet constraint, not the Federal Reserve's balance sheet constraint, but the big banks like the JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs guys, because of their balance sheet constraints that they face, they end up having to demand a higher return inside of those markets, whether it's coming from like, the repo market or whatever, in order for that to be profitable on account that they have to hold that capital, right? So in a sense, their banking regulation system can raise the interest rates within the lending of those big banks to each other into the money markets or to the repo facility or anywhere else, while at the same time saying, hey, we're lowering interest rates, with the effective fund rate. So they did lower the effective fund rate saying, hey, we did that part, but then the banking constraints that are happening within the balance sheets of the big banks themselves are like, yeah, great move, bro, but we aren't profitable unless we get a bigger return because of these regulations that are within the banking system itself. I will make a better video on that. I will go and get a bunch of information, and then we will break that down in a much better fashion. I don't think that that was a very good description of it, but if you just kind of look at it as that, as like a banking balance sheet constraint mechanism that would then demand them to have a higher return because of that capital requirement, it'll start to make a little bit more sense. Really, what we need is Joseph Wang. That's who we need in there. That's who we need to explain this to us. You know? All right. The Fed operating through their ample reserves framework, they effectively retired the OMO from the daily rating systems. The interest on reserve banks is now in charge of that job. OMO is only function now as a backstop. Please do Rebel Capitalist put out a video that explains it with a whiteboard? I was still confused. Well, yeah, the broken record, but end the Federal Reserve or we will forever lose. Well, see, this is the problem, Dave. What are you going to replace it with? Because if you're not going to replace it with anything, then you're going to have to assume that we're going to go back on a gold standard or use gold and silver for currency. And if that's the case, then what we'll end up doing is we're going to import stuff and export that currency, and we're all going to fall into pain and misery within a month or two because we're going to export all our money pretty much instantaneously. We can't afford to maintain this elevated standard of living without the fiat currency system. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm cool with it. Let's do it, man. I mean, hell, it's probably going to happen at some point anyway. Might as well get the party started. But I don't look forward to the day because it's going to be a very dramatic, horrible event that most people are going to face. Some people are going to do quite well, all right? And those of us who kind of understand the system and how it's going down and know the position that we can take with our precious metals and possibly cryptocurrencies on a lesser extent, but mostly it's probably going to be precious metals to get through that system to the other side of it and then deploy that into the economy to get the biggest return possible. Like, let's get it started. Let's do it. But I don't really look forward to the day because most people are going to be suffering. Because they just simply don't know what to do. Like every retiree is going to be in the street, you need to care. You need a career, not a job. It's why I was forced to get a job. True. I asked Edward Griffin that, and he said we can figure it out. No, we can't. Like that's very illogical that we can figure it out when you have Cantillon essay describing it very accurately from his views of what was taking place thousands of years before him, right? That if you are going to go down this path where you are a manufacturing powerhouse, you will increase your standard of living due to all the new money that comes in. Once you have done that, your manufacturing cost goes up and foreign competitors start bringing in their cheaper manufacturing and domestic manufacturers leave. Once that starts taking place, the only people this is going to be advantageous to is the people who have first access to the money, the people who are importing that foreign production, and then the foreign producers themselves. Everybody else suffers. The moment that the new money turns off, it all falls into pain and misery. We do not produce enough in this country to actually supply us with the standard of living of elevation like we are now living. To believe that we'll just figure it out means that we will be broke ass people with no gold, no silver, and no way of bringing that back until we have lowered our standard of living, reinvented ourselves as cheap manufacturers, and then hopefully get that people of the world to buy our products again. That is it. Don't wish for the gold standard. Now, if we do go back to a gold standard, or there is some chaotic event that creates this environment, I'm going to do quite well. Like I I'm actually looking forward to something like that to hopefully think my skills and understanding of it can position me the best. But I do not look forward to most of the people out there crying their eyes out trying to figure out what it is that they're going to do to get something to eat. That doesn't sound pleasant to me. Right? And no, that we can't just figure it out. Those people will not just be able to figure it out. That's very illogical. We have to be able to produce the real goods and services right here in this country. If we were doing that, hell yeah, let's bring on the gold standard, man. I mean, all about it, you know? But I understand also that we have elevated lifestyle and we do not manufacture that lifestyle for ourselves here. That's scary, right? That means we depend on the rest of the world to send us our lifestyle. And we give them, deliver to them empty paper promises to pay more empty paper promises into the future. No, like, don't wish for a gold standard. That's a very dangerous position. I've met G. Griffin. Spoke on the same stage to the same people. Had lunch with them at Hell's Kitchen in Vegas. I kind of like I know the all-nighter met him too. All right, you will not be hungry with our genetic foods. No fear, ride the tiger. We seem to have no choice. You do have a choice. I don't know where you don't have a choice. You have a choice right now not to accept dollars. You have a choice right now to position yourself in anything you want. I don't, where do you lack the choice? You might not feel like you have a choice. You might feel obligated. You might feel stuck. You might feel like all these things, but every single day you make a choice to live the life that you are living. You are choosing to do this every single moment, right? And you can list off all the reasons why you're stuck where you are and all the obligations and all, and you just don't understand, man. You just don't know. No, you're every single day where it is you are at is doing it because you are secretly love it, even if you don't. Even if you don't think you do, you secretly do. All right? All the tension, all the pain, all the fear, all the anxiety, you secretly love it, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be doing it. Think about that. You secretly love your pain and misery, because if you didn't love it, you wouldn't be doing it. You don't want to admit it either. The Griffins are sweethearts. Yeah, they are. Patricia was something else. Yeah, Jared Griffin's wife. Yeah, listen up. Do better. All right, inflation expectations is what really moves interest rates in the economy. The Fed only controls the bottom and top end of those rates besides driving those expectations. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that they can do, but really it does come down to expectations, and very little else matters. All right. If boomers were smart and hardworking, why weren't they better parents? They were financial. Where was financial education? They didn't know. Why did all their smart economic choices lead to better results? Why? Yeah, I'm thinking, why didn't they? And again, like, what you are doing is you are blaming boomers, and instead of understanding that there is an underlying economic force that was a cycle, right? Oh, they did it. They're the ones. They're the ones. Point the finger. Why? Tell me why they did all this, all the other things. And then meanwhile, I'm over here going, well, did you read chapter 6, 7, and 8 of Cantillon's essay on economic theory, part 2? Right? 6, 7, and 8, increase and decrease of money to the state, where new money comes into the system. The people who have first access to that money get to spend it at face value. It separates the rich from the poor. The people at the end of the line, they suffer the consequences from that, as the increase of new money that came in has caused all the prices to go up, but their wages didn't go up. Right? This isn't something to do with the boomers. This is Cantillon describing it hundreds of years before a boomer even was born. On top of that, he goes on to describe that if you do raise that standard of living, what's going to end up happening is that the domestic manufacturers are not going to be able to compete against the foreign producers out there. And those foreign producers are going to send in ever-increasing amounts of foreign production, and the domestic manufacturers are going to go find other foreign places to produce. This is Cantillon describing this. This isn't a political environment. This isn't a banking thing. This is an economic force taking place, and you don't have to blame boomers for it. I mean, you can. Go ahead. Blame the boomers. Hell, you won't have to look at the economic forces. Then you don't have to understand nothing. You can just blame. Just point the finger. That's it. In fact, do two fingers. Right? Hey, you can double it up. There's my excuse right there and there. Yeah. And then not have to, and then like meanwhile, the rest of us are over here going, well, most likely you're going to see a little bit more of that considering that they got the new money pouring in. Better get into some assets or cash flowing real estate or something like that, because, you know, if I leave myself behind because I just depended on my day job, that's probably going to be my fault, not the boomers and not the banking system or not anybody else, because, you know, if you understand and recognize that it's an underlying economic force that's playing out and you decide that you're not going to do something about it, and instead you decide that you're going to blame somebody for the reasonings that you're in the position you are, then you can pretty much thank yourself for the position that you hold. Right? Keep blaming the boomers, dude. It's their fault. In fact, it's better that you go and find a channel that blames the boomers so that you can then internalize it for an actual factual belief system, and then you can come back out here and debate me and prove me wrong. All right? Meanwhile, the rest of us are trying to figure out how it is that we can actually advance ourselves through this economy in the situation we're in without blame or excuses for our past behaviors and the reasons why we are in the position we are in, but just understand that it was a lesson well learned and that we better move forward with, right, the appropriate, you know, with the appropriate decisions. How else do you do it? I don't know. Like, how else are you supposed to do it? I mean, I blame my parents. My damn parents did it, you know. It's your fault, Mom. All right. So it's a unstoppable cycle, and it's poor people's fault. See, again, I love the excuses, man. I gotta go. Okay, we're almost done here. Freddie's gonna be out in just a second. Man, they went on forever. This basketball game was on. Okay, so it's not. It's new money coming into the system. People who have first access to it, they increase their standard of living, they enjoy the luxuries, and the luxurious experience what is that eventually caused the problem that we now experience. So if you want to blame anything, blame hardworking individuals producing and saving and increasing their standard of living, because increasing their standard of living means they moved into luxuries, and by moving into luxuries you create the problem. So that's who's at fault. It's not the poor people. They just happen to be at the end of the line, suffering the consequences of the situation. All right, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.